Okay guys, we're doing something a little different today. We're going to be looking at a list of Game Rant's 15 best recommendations for manhwa that are like solo leveling. Listen, I know this seems a little cringy to a lot of us that read or watch a lot of anime or read a lot of manhwa. The reality is a lot of people have watched solo leveling and that's all they've watched, and they want to jump into something that's really similar, but I'm kind of curious what they consider to be similar to solo leveling, because there's some things that you can obviously find in other stuff, but what are they going to choose? And already a little bit of red flags in what I see top of as their choice of pictures at the top with Leviathan, which is amazing manhwa, but I'm not sure it's a solo leveling like. I'll say it that way. All right, let's jump right into the list. This was made late September of 2022. Okay, Second Coming of Gluttony. I guess the only thing I could see that's similar is like maybe when he's transported into like the other, like the tower, but I don't think it's too similar to that. Particularly what Second Coming of Gluttony becomes. If you guys haven't read Second Coming of Gluttony, it has a really interesting start to the story. Amazing first chapter, like really got me hyped really quickly. Quickly turns into something else though, that I would not call very typical, but it is typical action manhwa type experiences. Though I will say it has a certain like school slice of life angle, which if you look at the picture on the right there, I wouldn't exactly call that slice of life too much, but at the same time it definitely has some school vibes, if you know what I mean. God of High School, I think you could recommend God of High School to someone that's read solo leveling simply because it's one of the titans of manhwa. Like Tower of God, God of High School, Noblesse, they're kind of like the old school big three for manhwa. Big three have nothing to do. Technically, they have to do just with sales, but the reality is like, it's one of the titans, and it's finished, which is good. Some awesome martial arts, some great fights, wacky as all hell story. I guess from the story makes very little sense perspective, it's similar, but I'd say it's not the most representative. Though I will say, as a series, it's fun to read. It's finished, so it's good to jump into, but God, does it fall off of a cliff at the second half of the story. Guys, if you like Go to High School all the way through, I'm curious, like, what is it that you like kept you engaged? Because God, I dropped it for like a year and a half before I went back and finally finished it. But that change with a introduction of a younger character really killed my motivation for that series. Okay, Leviathan, I don't agree. Like, I don't think I would send. I could maybe send someone that like was obsessed about Attack on Titan to see Leviathan, because like the monster design is insane and kind of wacky at the same time. You can kind of see it in the picture here, and it's like surviving in a crazy world like that is basically overcome by these crazy monsters. It's not quite as good as it could have been, but it's another finished manhwa, which is fantastic. To have finished manhwa at all is so nice. I think this one slept on a lot, particularly considering how great its art is. It definitely has some manga vibes to it. So there's definitely some manga that are a little similar. And the design of the art is a little more close to manga than it is close to manhwa. But it has beautiful colored panels, which remains one of the trademarks of the manhwa side. It's dark as all hell, and the ending was okay. Like, it wasn't life-changing, but it was okay. Let's see how do they even mention why they mention it. Remarkable art style, so it's a great choice if you want to read manhwa like solo leveling. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if this is done by AI, to be honest with you at this point. Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint, I guess I kind of see it. No. Okay, Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint is my number 2 right now as favorite manhwa. It's this phenomenal world building that's taken place of, like, fundamentally it's a story about a light novel becoming real life, which, if you read manhwa, is not the most original thing in the world. But there's no world building like Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint, with like the depth of just pure world building, of of these godlike creatures, the constellations, the way things interact with within the world, and how much they make sense is kind of crazy. And also the protagonist, that's like, what makes him win is he's brilliant. Like he knows what's going to happen from reading the light novel before, but his ways to manipulate the system and set things up are chef's kiss good. The art is really good as well. I will say that this is going to be a weird reference, and I don't know if you guys aren't going to get... With the way the characters look, they remind me of X. I don't know if you've ever seen it, X the animation. It's from the studio that did... technically, it's the studio that did XXX Holic and... God, I'm forgetting. And Sakura Cardcaptor. I'm forgetting the name of the... Damn, that's going to annoy me. But anyway, they look... It looks a little similar to X. The story in this is way better. But I think Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint is a weird reference to Soul Leveling. I'd say for someone that's more story-driven and a little bit less action-driven, this will be a better story. Because Sung Jin Woo wins all his fights. It's brute force. Brute force, like, powerful. His summons are too powerful. His magic is too powerful. Or his dagger ship, like, slash speed is too powerful. Very little of what he does is because he's outsmarted people. That's not what Sung Jin Woo is known for, and this is definitely one of those theories instead. That being said, brilliant piece of art that everyone should have on their list reading for sure. Reverse villain. Let's see. Did they call it similar because he's called Jung Woo? Had one lawfully goal to conquer and lead Murim, but unfortunately his adversary. Yeah, this one is like a story of characters sent through time, hero versus villain that continuously defeat each other until they reach like modern days. And it's one of those things where the villain is kind of a good guy. It's a good series. I don't think I talk about Reverse Villain enough. It's actually a pretty good series. I can kind of see the similarities in that there's devastation involved. But Sung Jin Woo is kind of a purely good character. There's no real nuance to his character, whereas Reverse Villain has a bit of some. And there's... Oh God, even though Reverse Villain doesn't have a lot, Reverse Villain has more emphasis on character development than Sung Jin Woo gets, which is tragic. God, Soul Leveling is rough, man. Oh, that is an offense. Okay, Gosu is another finished manhwa. Gosu is... Maybe they're recommending it based on the art style. Like, they have really cool art styles. Like, Soul Leveling, no, you say whatever you will about it. Like, art style-wise, it's phenomenal. Really, really good. Gosu, similarly, has an amazing art style, but it's completely different in style. It starts off with such a weird setup, too, which is nice, because manhwa has, particularly more modern manhwa, have a lot of the same setups. This one is way more of the traditional Murim martial arts manhwa, but with a character that almost has a start that you would only see in manga, where character's been trained his whole young life to get revenge for his master, but turns out all the people that killed his master are already dead, so he kind of loses his pathway, and that's where the story starts. And it kind of just sets up the weird interactions that the protagonist will have. There's some crazy fights in this one. He's really strong, but he does struggle in some of these fights, and it's a good one. A lot of people skip on Gosu, but they really should not. It's peak. Tower of the God. Tower of God. Similarities. It's one of the titans of manhwa. I put Soul Leveling again as one of the big titans of manhwa for sure. Like, the reality is a lot of people will get introduced to manhwa for the first time through Soul Leveling, and gotta be thankful for it because of that. But man, Tower of God has been around a lot longer, has a lot more development, a lot more characters. I'd call Tower of God the One Piece of the manhwa world, mostly in regards to the amount of characters you find out about, the amount of characters you learn to care about. But I'd say in no way is the story as compelling, particularly later on. Despite some of the coolest moments in the stories happening like recently, they're just not as engaging as they used to be, just because I feel like the adventure is not as compelling as it once was, and I can't even quite pinpoint why. The hiatus did not help. Like, I was up to date following it week to week, then there was a hiatus for a long period, and when I got back, I was kind of over it, to be honest with you. Hiatus can really kill your motivation. Similarity to Soul Leveling. main character, I guess he's similar to Sung Jin Woo from chapter 1, 2, 3, maybe. Cares about his friends, but he's kind of weak and frail, but he turns out to be really OP, maybe in that sense. Return Return of the Disaster Class Hero was sold to us as the next solo leveling. It's from the same studio. It came out just following, as solo leveling was coming to an end. And it was kind of set up as this OP protagonist that was going to beat up people. And it kind of lived up to that. It really was. The only thing is, solo leveling has an amazing first couple of chapters where it sets up a character that you want to root for. You're really invested in his becoming super powerful. And it loses its way a little bit later, but it remains a really cool series that was visually amazing. But Disaster Class Hero is much simpler. And the protagonist is kind of strong from the outset of the story, so it's not quite the same thing. However, there's some amazing revenge/beatdowns in the story that are really satisfying. But yeah, similarity to it, I guess. Studio art style is not that dissimilar, and pure action, 100%. What? I don't even. Okay. Question for you guys. The Boxer. Solo leveling, I'm not too sure. This is a little strange, guys. A little strange choice. Closely similar to the famous Saitama from One Punch Man. Yeah, it's not. In no way is this similar to that, and I would not compare it to One Punch Man at all. I wonder if this is generated content, because this seems like a very weak recommendation. That being said, The Boxer is a phenomenal series you should be reading. If you like sports manga or sports manhwa or anime, The Boxer is a must read. That and Windbreaker are among the must reads on the sports side. There's some other ones that I'm just not thinking of right now, but The Boxer is a definite must read. If you want to connect it to things, I guess the cold protagonist thing, the cold and talented protagonist. But if you do that, that's every protagonist in Manhwa. Is Mercenary Romance going to be on this list? Because he's cold and he doesn't show his emotions much? I kind of see this one a little bit more, at least. The Great Mage Returns After 4,000 Years, phenomenal series. It's going through an amazing period right now where the main character is about to hit peak OP-ness and defeat some badasses. But that being said, this is not a soul leveling However, in regards to a character that kind of comes back, a character that has the big lofty goals of protecting mankind, yeah, I guess there's some similarities there. But art style wise, story wise, character relationships matter a lot more in this story than Soul Leveling did. But it is still a one-man show. You understand, while he has an entourage of people that are pretty strong around him, there's no one that's going to really stand up to our protagonist in the end game, and Soul Leveling's the same. But Soul Leveling got there a lot faster of him being the only one that could kind of do anything useful. So yeah, I don't quite see it. What? Okay. Oh, I'm so annoyed. Oh man, I'm so annoyed. Soul Leveling's biggest flaw is it lacks character development. It lacks relationships. Eleceed's biggest strengths are character relationships and character development. Oh, I'm so annoyed. Oh god. Eleceed is a phenomenal series that I slept on for freaking years, while everyone... I was on my Twitch for a while, and I'd have several people just screaming, you need to read Eleceed, it's so good. And I read the first 2 chapters and I just couldn't. It's boring. There was nothing happening. The protagonist is lame as all hell. He did not look like this when I started. Oh my god. He's this meek protagonist that can't do anything. He's super unconfident and stuff like that. But god, this series gets good, man. But you need to get through a bunch of chapters of basically slice of life of characters playing with cats, which I'm a cat guy. I'm fine with cats. Ooh, which meant that I had to get over that hump, but once you do, oh man, it's good. I guess Kaiden would be like, there's no I don't see it. What do you see as similar between Eleceed and as Soul Leveling? I get their similarities that they're doing in regards to popular manhwa. Like Eleceed's super popular, Soul Leveling's popular. Read it, makes sense. But yeah, no, I would not. Legend of the Northern Blade. Okay, Legend of the Northern Blade, my number one, my favorite manhwa right now. Oh my god, it's been my favorite manhwa for quite some time. It's so good. Similarity to Soul Leveling. It's better written. This one is better written, has better characters, protagonist. Soul Leveling has a cool protagonist, but I'd say this is like the rare series that has a cooler protagonist than Sung Jin Woo is. The people around him matter a lot more than they do in Soul Leveling. The storyline, the quest is better. The art style is debatable. I think you could... I understand why Soul Leveling is so popular. It's beautiful. The feeling of speed is great. I say Legend of Northern Blade's art is better, but it's taste specific. Its art style, when you look at it, it is absolutely beautiful. It's a work of art. But it's not for everyone. Like, it's really not for everyone. Like, and that purple hue and things like that are not... It's like, maybe the purple... That must be the similarity. It's the purple. That's the similarity between the two. Like, again, what did they do? He was introduced as a weak character with no fortune in martial arts, a skill name, how origin. His name is Jin as well. That could be, yeah. Alright. I'm a little, years later... Beginning after... Oh, this is just a highlight reel of all the most popular manhwa. Beginning After the End is an interesting one because it's the only manhwa that I see that, like, has a non-traditional release scheme. It's not released in Korea in the same way as other things are. It's released on Tapas first, to my knowledge. Or among the first. It's... Artist and writer are not your typical artist and writer, and the story is very much a manga story. It's a very typical, in setup, it's a very typical isekai with much more mature writing. A protagonist that's older in a younger person's body during reincarnation, but he has all his memories, but he acts the age of the adult, and it makes sense, at least for most of it. The only thing I'll say about it is I wish the series looked like this. Like, it just doesn't, honestly. It looks like this in some few moments, but the reality is the art style is such a bad match for, like, the tone of the story where it goes. Frustrates me, like, because it's gotten to it's a very bright and hopeful series for a long while in it. It's an adventure tale of a character, like, meeting some hardships for sure, but, like, it's a quest. Like, he's on various quests and adventures along the way for some stuff, and then there'll be, like, a school arc, which is, like, this more very hopeful period, which is, like, a bit brighter. But the color scheme of this series is very bright, and when there's dark moments, they're still really bright, and it feels weird. And when it goes dark like this, purple, dark blue, and stuff like that, it's good. But again, some of the art style looks too childish for how scary it's supposed to be, which I think is where the light novel gets off with much better, because it leaves it to your imagination to what this looks like. And you can still give it that dark tone that it is. So, yeah. This is probably, in my opinion, maybe the closest one so far to Soul Leveling. Disaster Class Hero has some similarities. Second Life Ranker, like, the setup is different. Like, it's a character going after his brother's killers, basically. He goes to this towers, it's a thing in Manhwa everywhere. But he goes on this great quest to kind of avenge his brother, but he becomes extremely OP. There's an aspect of, like, summoning that takes place, like this, like, kind of like Arise a little bit. He fights with a dagger a lot of the time, and a sword. Like, it varies. He has, like, I can see it. I can kind of see it. I'm not crazy about the art style of the series, which is weird. Like, I actually like the way his, like, if you look here, I like the way his brother looks in this, but I actually don't like the art style for his character. And there's something when I can't even quite pinpoint it, but the way it's drawn doesn't quite work for me in the digital art style that it has, but maybe it might. Like, do you guys know what it is about it? I'm a little curious. Before we get to number one, guys, if you're still here reading this, watching this, reading this, you probably liked the video. Please like it, comment down below, I'd appreciate it, and subscribe to the channel. I would also appreciate it. Nano Machine. Okay. So Nano Machine's a Muram series, which is very different from Solo Leveling, which is not, which is more of a Gates monster story. This is not a story about monsters. This is purely a story about humans. That being said, what I will agree with is the main character of the story gets access to a power that makes him more powerful than anyone else in the story so far. Or at least in regards to potential, because it's a cheat system. It's a complete cheat system. And he's the only one that gets this system in the same way Sung Jin Woo is the only one that gets the leveling system. So, yeah, I can kind of see it. Quality of model-wise, Nano Machine was a lot higher on my list before. I think that this series really suffered from the fact that it finished its first big arc of reaching the goal. Actually, it wasn't the first arc, technically, but reaching the goal that he was aiming for. And now he's reached it, and now they're aiming for another goal. But I feel like they're a little slow on the start here. That this part has not been that engaging as it expands the size of the world a little bit. Think of it similar as Chronicles of Heavenly Demon, how it went from being like the him rising up in the sect to now being him as the general of a war. It's a very different dynamic. Doesn't mean it's not good, but it means that transition needs to be done really well, which I think Chronicle did amazingly well, which in this one I think is suffering a little bit. Alright, so guys, this was the list of solo leveling likes that they introduced. Yeah. I don't think too many of these are like solo leveling. I actually think it would almost been better to do like a necromancer like list. Or just do OP protagonists. Technically, a lot of these are OP protagonist stories, but some of them make no sense to me. Like, Eleceed is so different from Solo Leveling. It cannot be said. It is a slice of life, pure action, a slice of life mixed with action and a bunch of other stuff, like about character development and relationships, and Solo Leveling is about the exact opposite. That being said, guys, if you like this type of video, please leave a comment down below. I'd be curious what type of other videos you'd like to see me do on this channel, about Manhwa or about other stuff, guys. I can do manga, I can do anime, I can do stuff like that. I follow up a lot on that stuff, but I know you guys like Manhwa, so I do mostly that here. So with that, guys, have yourself a great day.